Emily's world shattered the moment she learned that the woman she trusted to care for her baby, Jessica, had taken Lucas's life. What began as a hopeful search for help turned into a nightmare of betrayal, secrets, and unimaginable loss. This is the heartbreaking story of a mother's fight for justice after the unthinkable happened. Emily had always dreamed of becoming a mother. When her baby boy Lucas was born, her world seemed to light up in a way she had never imagined. The small Florida town where she lived was peaceful and full of friendly neighbors. The kind of place where families grew up together and children played safely in the yards. Emily cherished every moment with Lucas, watching him grow, learning to smile and laugh, and celebrating his tiny milestones. But as much as she loved being a stay-at-home mom, financial pressures and her desire to rebuild her career pushed her to look for someone she could trust to care for Lucas during the day. Finding the right babysitter was one of the hardest decisions Emily ever had to make. She wanted someone who would treat Lucas like family, someone dependable and kind. After weeks of searching, she found Jessica. Jessica came highly recommended by a friend of a friend. She was warm, gentle, and seemed experienced with children. Her resume was impressive, and she had glowing reviews from previous families. Emily felt a sense of relief when Jessica agreed to start watching Lucas while Emily returned to her job. The first day Jessica took care of Lucas, Emily felt a mixture of nerves and hope. She packed Lucas's diaper bag with everything he might need and kissed him goodbye, trying to stay calm as she left. Jessica greeted Emily with a bright smile and reassured her that Lucas would be well cared for. When Emily returned home later that afternoon, Jessica was waiting with Lucas, playing quietly on the living room floor. The baby looked happy and healthy, and Emily thought maybe, just maybe, she had made the right choice. For the first several weeks, Jessica seemed perfect. She sent Emily pictures of Lucas smiling and playing, and wrote little notes about his naps and meals. Emily found comfort in these updates and began to relax, focusing on her work while trusting Jessica to keep her son safe. She even introduced Jessica to a few neighbors and family members, confident in her choice. Jessica quickly became a familiar part of their daily routine. But beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect arrangement, something was beginning to unravel. Emily noticed subtle changes in Lucas. He seemed more fussy than usual, sometimes crying without an obvious reason.
Oh.
One day, she spotted a small bruise on his arm. At first, she dismissed it as an accident, a normal part of babyhood. But then more marks appeared. Faint scratches on his face, a mysterious bump on his head. Each time, Jessica offered gentle explanations of fall during playtime, Lucas rubbing against furniture. Emily wanted to believe her, but a nagging feeling in the back of her mind grew stronger. Despite the growing unease, Emily struggled to confront the truth. She was torn between trusting the woman she had welcomed into their home and fearing for her baby's safety. She wondered if she was being too suspicious, or if her worries were valid. The fear of losing Lucas was overwhelming, and Emily clung tightly to hope. She convinced herself that the bruises and scratches were nothing serious, that Jessica was doing her best. Unbeknownst to Emily, the dark storm gathering around her family was about to break in the most devastating way imaginable. What started as a hopeful chapter in her life was about to turn into a nightmare that would forever change her in the quiet Florida neighborhood she called home. The trust Emily placed in Jessica was about to be shattered in a heartbreaking moment that no mother should ever have to face. As the weeks went by, Emily's unease grew stronger, even though she tried to ignore it. The bruises on Lucas didn't seem to fade as quickly as they should, and sometimes he cried in a way that sounded different, more desperate, more painful. Emily watched him closely, searching for answers. But Jessica's reassurances seemed to quiet her fears for the time being. The babysitter continued to send regular updates and photos, each one showing Lucas smiling or playing. But something about them didn't feel right to Emily. The smiles in the pictures looked forced. And sometimes the photos showed Lucas with a shadow or a mark she hadn't noticed before. At home, Emily's worries started to affect her daily life. She found herself checking Lucas over repeatedly, examining every little scratch or bruise. She also noticed changes in his behavior. Lucas, who had once been cheerful and curious, was now more withdrawn and restless. He often refused to eat, and Emily noticed he was losing weight. Despite her concern, Jessica insisted that Lucas was just going through a difficult phase, and that babies sometimes act out when their routines change. Emily wanted to believe her, but deep inside she felt something was terribly wrong. One afternoon, Emily tried to talk to a close friend about her concerns. She described the bruises, the changes in Lucas, and her growing doubts about Jessica. The friend urged Emily to be cautious and consider the possibility that the babysitter might not be as trustworthy as she seemed. Emily listened but felt conflicted. Jessica had been so kind and helpful at first, and it was hard to imagine her harming the baby. Still, the seeds of suspicion had been planted, and Emily decided to watch more carefully. In the days that followed, Emily began noticing small things she hadn't before. Jessica sometimes appeared distracted and tense when Emily arrived to pick up Lucas. There were moments when the babysitter avoided eye contact or gave vague answers about what happened during the day. Emily also learned from neighbors that Jessica had a history of short temper and arguments, information that had been kept from her during the hiring process. These new revelations only deepened Emily's doubts. Despite these warning signs, Emily was hesitant to act immediately. She worried about making a mistake or causing trouble without proof. She also feared what would happen to Lucas if she suddenly removed him from Jessica's care without a backup plan. This fear kept Emily silent as she tried to gather more information and watch closely for anything unusual. The tension in Emily's heart was unbearable. She felt like she was walking a tightrope between hope and dread. Every day she wondered if she would find a reason to trust Jessica again, or if the worst was waiting just beneath the surface. Meanwhile, Jessica's behavior grew more erratic. Emily noticed that the babysitter often seemed tired and irritable, sometimes snapping at Lucas or rushing through his care. The gentle woman Emily had first met was disappearing, replaced by someone unpredictable and dangerous. Unseen by Emily, the situation was spiraling out of control. The cracks in Jessica's facade were growing wider, and the danger to Lucas was increasing. Emily's instincts screamed at her to act, but fear and uncertainty kept her trapped in a nightmare that was far from over. What Emily did not yet know was that the heartbreaking moment she feared was closer than she could imagine, and the consequences would be devastating for everyone involved. Emily's world shattered on a base she never expected. It began with a sudden, frantic phone call from a stranger claiming to know Jessica Call that sent a chill down Emily's spine. The voice on the other end was urgent but unclear, mentioning police and something terrible happening. Emily dropped everything and rushed to the local police station, her heart pounding with fear and confusion. She was desperate to find out what was happening to Jessica, and more importantly, to her baby Lucas. At the station, the officers' faces were grave. They revealed that Jessica had been found missing from her apartment. And during a welfare check, officers discovered Lucas's unresponsive inside her home. The baby was rushed to the hospital, but despite doctors' efforts, he could not be saved. The news hit Emily like a freight train. Her precious boy was gone, and it was tied directly to the woman she had trusted most. The police quickly began their investigation. Evidence showed that Lucas had suffered severe injuries, far worse than the minor bruises Emily had noticed before. The autopsy report revealed signs of prolonged abuse, painting a horrifying picture of what the baby had endured while in Jessica's care. The realization crushed Emily, who felt a whirlwind of emotions, shock, grief, anger, and guilt all crashing down at once. How could she have missed the signs? How could she have let this happen? As the investigation deepened, more unsettling details emerged about Jessica's past. She had a long history of mental health issues that were never disclosed during the hiring process. Records showed previous arrests related to violent incidents, none of which Emily had been told about. Jessica had carefully hidden her troubled past behind a mask of charm and friendliness, deceiving not only Emily, but several other families. Emily was forced to confront the terrifying truth that the person she had welcomed into her home was not who she seemed to be. The community was shaken. Neighbors who had once thought Jessica was a kind, quiet woman began to share stories of strange noises, unexplained disturbances, and odd behavior they had witnessed, but never reported. The more people spoke up, the clearer it became that Jessica's darker side had been lurking just beneath the surface, unnoticed and unchecked. Emily struggled with overwhelming guilt. She questioned every decision she had made, wondering if she could have done something differently to save Lucas. the burden of blame weighed heavily on her. Even as those around her offered support and told her the fault lay with Jessica alone. But for Emily, the pain was unbearable. Mother's worst nightmare had become a tragic reality. Meanwhile, police continued piecing together the timeline of Jessica's actions. It appeared that the violence toward Lucas escalated over time, becoming more severe and frequent. The babysitter's mental state deteriorated, leading to the horrific act that took Lucas's life. The investigation revealed not only physical abuse, but also evidence of neglect and emotional cruelty. Each new fact made the tragedy even more heartbreaking. Emily's heartbreak was profound, but it was only the beginning of a long and difficult journey. The truth about Jessica's betrayal had been uncovered, but justice had yet to be served. The community braced itself for the trial that would expose every dark detail, while Emily prepared to face a future forever changed by the loss of her beloved son. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that Jessica had spun a web of lies so carefully crafted that even those closest to her had been deceived. She had presented herself as the perfect babysitter, but beneath that facade lay a disturbing past that no one had suspected. Authorities discovered that Jessica had deliberately falsified her references, fabricating stories about her experience and character. The glowing recommendations Emily had relied on were actually written by Jessica herself or by people who knew little about her true nature. This betrayal cut deep into the community's trust. Neighbors who once believed Jessica was a quiet and kind woman began to speak up, sharing stories that painted a very different picture. Several recalled strange late-night arguments and unusual behavior that had gone unreported because no one wanted to get involved. There were whispers of erratic mood swings and sudden outbursts that neighbors had witnessed but dismissed as personal struggles. Others mentioned that Jessica rarely allowed visitors in her apartment and seemed guarded, which in hindsight raised alarm bells. Emily was stunned by the revelations. She struggled to reconcile the woman she thought she knew with the darker truth emerging from police reports and witness statements. Jessica's ability to manipulate those around her left Emily feeling betrayed and vulnerable. The more details she learned, the more she questioned every interaction and every choice she had made in trusting Jessica with Lucas. This painful awareness became a heavy burden, weighing on her every thought. The community, too, was grappling with shock and disbelief. How had such a tragedy unfolded right under their noses? Parents who had once considered Jessica as a babysitter or a friend began to feel fear and suspicion. The sense of safety that had once defined the neighborhood was shattered, replaced by unease and vigilance. Local authorities vowed to review and strengthen background check processes to prevent similar situations in the future. As the court date approached, more disturbing facts came to light. Jessica's history of violence and mental illness was worse than initially reported. She had spent time in psychiatric care but had never disclosed this when applying for jobs involving children. The investigation uncovered that Jessica had a pattern of unstable relationships and episodes of anger management problems, which had escalated dangerously in recent months. Her carefully maintained image was nothing more than a mask hiding a deeply troubled individual. Emily found herself at the center of a media storm. Reporters and news crews descended on her small town, seeking interviews and statements. Though she was exhausted and heartbroken, Emily decided to speak out, not only to tell Lucas's story, but also to warn other parents. She shared her experience openly, hoping to raise awareness about the importance of thorough background checks and listening to one's instincts. Her bravery inspired others to come forward with stories of abuse they had witnessed but never reported. Through it all, Emily's pain remained raw and unbearable. She was haunted by memories and the what-ifs that replayed endlessly in her mind. But amid the darkness, a flicker of resolve grew within her. She vowed to honor Lucas's memory by fighting for change, by making sure no other family would have to endure the heartbreak she faced. Her journey from victim to advocate became a powerful reminder that even in tragedy, strength could be found. Jessica's trial loomed ahead, promising to reveal every detail of the horror that had taken place. For Emily, the path forward was uncertain and painful, but she was determined to face it with courage. The story of betrayal, loss, and hope was far from over. After the tragedy, Emily's life was forever changed, but she refused to let despair consume her. The months following Lucas's death were a blur of grief, court hearings, and endless questions. As Jessica's trial began, shocking details emerged that sent ripples through the community. Evidence presented in court revealed the full extent of Jessica's cruelty, including moments of neglect and violence that no one had known about before. The prosecution painted a grim picture of a woman overwhelmed by her own demons, unable to control her anger, and tragically taking it out on the innocent child in her care. Throughout the trial, Emily attended every session, her heart breaking anew with each piece of testimony. Witnesses described Jessica's erratic behavior, her history of violent outbursts, and the many lies she had told to maintain her carefully constructed image. Medical experts testified about the injuries Lucas suffered and how those injuries showed a clear pattern of abuse over time. The court also heard from neighbors and former acquaintances, who spoke about Jessica's troubled past and warning signs that had been ignored. Despite the pain, Emily's courage shone through. She gave a powerful victim impact statement, sharing her story with honesty and strength. Her words resonated deeply with those in the courtroom, reminding everyone that behind the facts and evidence was a mother's unbearable loss. The judge and jury were moved by her resilience, understanding the profound heartbreak she carried every day. Outside the courtroom, Emily found support in unexpected places. Community members rallied around her, offering comfort and helping her start a foundation in Lucas's name to support families affected by child abuse and neglect. The foundation aimed to raise awareness about the dangers of trusting unknown caregivers without thorough checks, and 2, provide resources for parents facing similar fears. Emily's mission became a way to turn her pain into purpose, ensuring Lucas's legacy lived on. The trial ended with Jessica being found guilty of murder and child abuse. The verdict brought a measure of justice, but also reopened wounds that would take years to heal. Jessica was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, removing her from the community, but leaving behind a scar that would never fully fade. In the months and years that followed, Emily worked tirelessly to educate others about the signs of abuse and the importance of trusting parental instincts. She spoke at schools, community centers, and parenting groups, sharing her experience as a cautionary tale. Her story sparked changes in local laws, pushing for stricter regulations on childcare providers and better mental health support for caregivers. Though Emily's heart would always carry the pain of losing Lucas, she found strength in knowing she was making a difference. The nightmare she endured became a catalyst for change, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope can grow. Her journey from devastation to advocacy inspired many, proving that love for a child could survive even the most heartbreaking loss. The quiet Florida neighborhood slowly healed, but the memory of Lucas remained alive in the hearts of those who knew him. Emily's story was a solemn warning and a beacon of hope, showing that vigilance, courage, and community support were crucial in protecting the most vulnerable. Through her relentless fight, Emily ensured that Lucas's life, though tragically cut short, would not be forgotten, that no other family would have to suffer the same heartbreak.